Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking what feels like a shortcut to organizational resilience. We're going to unpack something that's often hidden in plain sight. How developing leaders from the ground up. Well, that determines if you thrive or, frankly, collapse when change hits. We've looked at a whole stack of sources for this one, strategy papers, community development stuff, you name it. And there's this clear consensus on a central problem. So many groups, organizations, communities, ministries, they treat leadership like something you have to import, you know?
Exactly, like you go shopping for it.
Yeah, you look outside, recruit the star, hire the big name, borrow the talent. The assumption is always that the fix comes from somewhere else.
And well, that assumption,
Yeah.
that's precisely what creates fragility. It's what the research calls these fragile systems.
Mm-hmm.
You get momentum, vision, mission, all totally dependent on that one charismatic director, that one founder.
The hero figure.
The hero figure, yeah. And the moment they leave, or burn out, or, get a bigger offer, the whole thing just shudders, often collapses. This dependency, it doesn't just slow growth, it fundamentally stifles the very internal capacity, the ownership you need to actually survive long term.
So if the next great leader for your organization is maybe already there, just sitting quietly, overlooked, no title, then this import model isn't just flawed, it's actually working against you.
It's counterproductive, completely.
So our mission today is to unpack the alternative path. And this isn't just like writing a succession plan to stick in a drawer. It's about intentionally cultivating leaders from within, shifting the whole focus from depending on one person to creating a system that actually multiplies itself, a resilient system.
Moving towards what some call a true succession culture, not just a plan.
Okay, so to make that shift, we first have to admit how tempting that imported hero model is. Our sources call it the Atlas complex.
The Atlas complex, I like that.
Yeah, this expectation that one person can or even should carry the weight of everything. But loading it all onto one person, it's not just a recipe for burnout for them.
No, it affects everyone.
It creates this massive growth bottleneck for everyone else because, well, nobody else gets a chance to build their own leadership muscles.
And the contrast in practice is fascinatingly clear in the sources. They often use these kinds of fictional but very relatable stories. Story one, an organization needs a quick fix, right? So they import a celebrity leader, big resume, lots of buzz.
You see all the time.
All the time. And maybe attendance spikes or funding goes up fast. But the people inside, they stay consumers of that leader's charisma. They're not really co-owners of the mission.
So what happens when the hero leaves?
Well, inevitably they move on after, say, 3 years, and the energy in the organization just evaporates almost as fast as it appeared because it was tied to that one person.
Okay, so that's the fragile model. What's the alternative look like? Story two.
Right, contrast that with story two. This is maybe a community group that grows slowly. The first leaders are, well, they're messy.
Haha, realistic.
Very realistic.
Yeah.
They're volunteers, invited, coached, people who rise up right from the neighborhood soil, They make misfolks, definitely. But they learn, they stay put, they're rooted. Fast forward 10 years, that community, it has this fundamental resilience. A leadership transition happens, and it barely skips a beat.
Because the mission isn't tied to just one name.
Exactly. It's networked across maybe 20 people who've all grown into their roles.
That second story, the slow-rooted growth. I mean, it sounds ideal, but here's the pushback I imagine, right? How do you sell that slower gardener's ethos to a board or stakeholders who are screaming for immediate, measurable, fast results? Isn't slow growth just inefficient today?
That's the core tension, isn't it? But the gardener's ethos is precisely the corrective posture we need. Instead of asking that market-driven question, who can we import to fix things fast, we have to ask these more fundamental, rooted questions. Like, what capacity is already alive in this place? And who is quietly bearing fruit already, maybe unnoticed, who could be nurtured?
So the inefficiency is maybe just short-term perception.
I think so. It might feel slower upfront, but long-term. It's arguably the only efficient path to genuine sustainability. Anything else is just borrowing time. And this really touches on why the sources treat this as more than just like a management hack. When we talk leadership formation this way, it needs to be. The researchers use this word ontological.
Ontological. Okay, I'll unpack that a bit.
Yeah, it sounds academic, but it just means it changes who a person is, their actual character, their identity, their internal wiring, not just the tasks they can tick off a list. And this approach actively pushes back against the celebrity leader model. fixing things by sheer charisma.
Right, or the other extreme.
Or the technocratic scalability model, trying to fix everything with just systems and processes, ignoring the human element. Neither of those reliably builds resilience, according to the data.
Okay, so if we're buying into this idea, gardening instead of importing, we have to change how we spot potential leaders in the first place. We need to bridge that gap between, say, a flashy resume and actual deep character. This idea of seeing with kingdom eyes, prioritizing character over credentials.
Yes, you have to flip the core question.
So it's not who can dazzle a crowd.
No, it's who bears fruit in secret. Who's faithful when nobody's watching? That's the real starting point.
And how do you spot that? What are the practical criteria?
Well, the criteria become things you can actually observe, not just bullet points on an application. You look for faithfulness,
Meaning?
just basic consistency in small things. If someone can't be punctual or handle simple details reliably, why would you trust them with bigger responsibilities? It sounds basic, but it's foundational.
Makes sense. What else?
You look for neighbor trust. This is like the real currency of local leadership. Who do people naturally call when their car breaks down? Or they need actual help, not just professional advice.
That informal relational capital.
Exactly. It's huge. It shows they're already trusted on the ground.
Yeah.
Then you absolutely need humility and teachability.
Yeah.
Are they willing to accept correction? Can they talk about their mistakes honestly? Are they genuinely open to learning? Or do they get defensive?
That's a big one. Pride can derail everything.
Absolutely. And finally, look for servant fruit. Have they shown they can serve without needing the spotlight, without needing a title or immediate recognition? These are the deep roots. They ensure that when leaders do get authority, they don't become toxic or self-serving.
Okay, that's helpful, but it still feels a bit subjective, maybe.
Okay.
How do you make it more actionable day to day?
Well, the research offers a really simple, memorable screening tool. It's called the FAT heuristic.
SAT?
Yeah, FAT leaders should be faithful, available, and teachable.
Faithful, available, teachable. Okay, I like that. It's simple.
It's beautifully simple because it forces you past just the surface skills, right? It checks for that deep stability and character. Are they reliable? Are they actually present? And are they willing to learn?
But you can't just ask them, are you FAT right? You need to test it somehow.
Exactly. You have to test these attributes. And one of the most insightful methods suggested is something called the failure history debrief.
Failure history debrief. Tell me more.
So instead of just focusing on all their successes, which everyone prepares for, you ask candidates to talk about a significant mistake they made, maybe in a past leadership role or even just a service role. But here's the crucial part. You ask what they learned from it. And critically, what process or change they put in place to prevent it from happening again.
Okay. So you're probing for self-awareness.
Exactly. That level of self-awareness, the ability to learn from failure, it reveals far more about their capacity for growth than, say, any glowing recommendation letter ever could.
That's brilliant. It normalizes failure as part of growth, but focuses on the capacity to recover and learn. Okay, so we've identified these FAT individuals using these methods. How do we then intentionally build them up? We need a structure, right? We can't just throw them in the deep end, but we also can't rush them.
Precisely. We need a clear, practical blueprint. The material often calls this a three-phase leadership pipeline. Helper, facilitator, trainer.
Helper, facilitator, trainer.
Yeah, it's a structured path designed to intentionally grow these faithful individuals into leaders who can then multiply themselves. And it's not just a checklist. It's infused with mentorship and real responsibility at every single step.
Okay, let's unpack phase one then. The helper. This is the starting point, the doer.
Right. The focus here is totally foundational. It's about character formation, continuing, building good habits, basic skills, things like punctuality, keeping confidentiality, basic organization. The operating model is really clear. I do, you watch and help.
So the experienced leader is modeling.
Exactly. The tasks for the helper are clearly defined. They should be high utility, actually useful, but low risk.
Give me an example.
Okay, maybe preparing discussion questions based on a template, setting up the room for a meeting, coordinating the food for a single outreach event, things like that. This whole phase is designed to test one thing above all else. Can they be consistent and teachable in the small things? Like the Bible says, faithful in little, if they can't show up on time to set up chairs.
They probably won't handle strategic decisions well later.
Got it.
Precisely.
Okay, so moving from just helping to actually owning something, that feels like a big leap. That's phase two, the facilitator, the enabler. what changes here.
Yeah, it's a significant shift. The focus moves to taking initiative and owning something within a clearly defined area. And the model evolves too. Now it's you do, I watch and help.
So the roles are reversing.
They're starting to reverse, yes. This is often the first time they're allowed to make real decisions that have consequences. And to prevent what we talked about, delegation without discipleship, which is just abandonment, a crucial tool gets introduced here.
Yeah.
The delegation charter.
A delegation charter. Okay, what's that involve? It's critical.
Mhm.
Think of it as a simple, maybe one-page agreement or covenant between the mentor and the facilitator. It formally defines 4 key things. 1, their specific decision-making domain. What decisions are officially theirs to make now?
Clarity.
2, any budget thresholds. How much money can they spend without needing higher approval? 3, clear boundaries. What are they explicitly not allowed to decide or touch yet? And 4, the review cadence. How often will you meet specifically to debrief their progress, their decisions, their challenges within this domain?
Okay, that sounds incredibly helpful for managing expectations and reducing anxiety on both sides.
It really is. It provides psychological safety. The goal here is for them to learn judgment by actually doing, by making real decisions, maybe leading a small team, perhaps launching a new community care project, or running a specific internal program.
So they move from just assisting a process.
To owning an actual outcome, a
Yeah.
defined outcome.
Right. And then we hit the final stage, phase 3, the trainer, the multiplier. What's the success measure here? It sounds different again.
It shifts completely. The measure isn't really about them running programs anymore. It's about reproduction. The model now is simply, you train others.
Ah, so their main job is to develop more leaders.
Exactly. The trainer's primary function is no longer just delivering the mission themselves, but ensuring the mission survives them. They have to actively recruit, coach, and deploy the next wave of helpers and facilitators coming up behind them.
And is that just encouraged or?
Well, the research really insists that for this multiplication to truly take root in the culture, it needs to be an explicit commitment. So every commissioned trainer is actually required to recruit and mentor at least one new helper in the next cycle.
Wow. Okay, so that builds multiplication right into the system's DNA.
That's the goal, embedding reproduction.
Okay, so this whole pipeline, helper, facilitator, trainer, it sounds great, but it really hinges on that engine you mentioned earlier, this pairing of, what was it, radical delegation and relentless coaching.
Yes, those two have to go hand in hand.
You have to give real authority, real ownership, maybe earlier than feels comfortable.
That's the radical delegation part.
But as you said, just delegating without the coaching part is basically abandonment. So how do we make that coaching relentless, but also practical? Especially when correcting mistakes, which will happen.
Yeah, mistakes are guaranteed, even essential for learning.
Yeah.
But the feedback needs a structure. You need a disciplined, non-judgmental way to give it. Vague stuff like you need to be more proactive is just useless.
Right. It doesn't help anyone improve.
No. So the research strongly advocates for the SBI model. Situation, behavior, impact.
SBI.
Oh, yeah. It helps take the emotional charge out and focuses squarely on the facts. You start with the situation. Where and when did this happen? In Tuesday's team meeting. Then describe the specific observable behavior, not your interpretation, just what they actually did.
Yeah.
You interrupted Sarah 3 times while she was explaining her proposal. And finally, you clearly state the impact. What was the result of that behavior on the mission or on other people? This seemed to shut down her idea, and the team consensus shifted before we fully explored it.
Okay, I see. Situation, behavior, impact. It keeps it concrete, actionable, focused on learning, not just blame.
Exactly. It makes feedback a tool for formation, not just evaluation.
So as you build this kind of culture, this multiplication engine, you obviously need different ways to measure success, right? It can't just be about the quick attendance spike or the immediate bottom line anymore. What metrics actually honor this more resilient, long-term approach?
Yeah, you definitely need to look beyond the traditional, often short-term metrics. The sources suggest focusing on a couple of critical health indicators. First, something called the reproduction index, or RI.
Reproduction index.
Yeah, is basically the number of new leaders you train who then successfully begin to train and form others. You want that RI to be greater than 1.0 over time.
Meaning each leader eventually produces more than one leader to replace or succeed them.
Exactly. It shows genuine multiplication is happening, not just addition.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second one?
The second key metric is the redundancy ratio.
Redundancy ratio. Sounds maybe negative.
Yeah, the name isn't great, but the concept is vital. It measures your organizational health specifically in a transition scenario. It's simply the number of people who could competently step into any critical role if the primary person suddenly left.
Ah, so it's about bench strength.
Exactly. You should be actively aiming for 2 or more trained backups for every key function. If only one person knows how to run payroll or manage the key client relationship, you have a fragile system. If 3 people know, you've got resilience.
These metrics, the RI and the redundancy ratio, they almost sound like governance tools, not just performance dashboards.
They absolutely are, because as you start distributing authority more widely through this pipeline, you must simultaneously build in stronger safeguards. The sources are really clear on this. Good governance is crucial to protect both the people involved and the mission itself.
Things like,
Things like clear term limits for certain roles, really transparent finances, having established pathways for restoration when people inevitably mess up. These are essential.
they're like the necessary fences.
Exactly. They're the fences that prevent that old hero model from just reasserting itself in a new guise, right? Where maybe a newly developed leader becomes the new untouchable authority figure. Good structure prevents that.
Hmm. This whole deep dive really clarifies it for me. The transformation we're talking about isn't found in just launching a new program or making one quick, splashy hire. It's a fundamental culture shift, isn't it?
It really is.
Moving away from that monopolized authority where one person holds all the cards towards something more like network distributed leadership. Leadership that's actually rooted and therefore resilient right there in the local soil.
And building that kind of leadership from the ground up, well, it takes tremendous patience and courage, frankly. It means resisting that constant lure of the quick win,
Hmm?
the immediate spike in numbers, resisting that in favor of cultivating depth that actually lasts across generations. It's truly an investment in the long view.
So, as you, our listener, think about integrating these ideas, here's maybe a provocative thought to reflect on this week. If your primary measure of success is only immediate impact, you will almost certainly, inevitably, trade depth for speed. So, what sacrificial trade off are you willing to make this week? Maybe it's time, maybe it's money, maybe it's even your own prestige. What are you willing to trade to truly prioritize developing character formed leadership for the next generation?